Welcome, Erin Lieberman, brand new Executive Director of America Outdoors, to our most recent Fireside Chat. We are thrilled to have you. We ambushed you at the Colorado River Outfitters Association conference and asked if you'd be a part of this, and you were a very willing victim. So thanks again for showing up.
I will give credit to Zebulon. Aaron approached our booth, so technically he us. We just occupied him for like an hour talking because we just kept riffing forever, and it was just like, man, we need to continue this on in the fireside.
So much so that
Yeah.
Karen couldn't find you. She was looking for you, and we held you hostage for like an hour in our booth. And she was like, "He was here this whole time?" Yep,
Yeah,
he was
in
just
plain
chatting.
sight. No, I'm super glad to be here. It's always good talking to you guys.
Yeah,
Likewise.
absolutely. Thank you. So Corey, where do you want to go with this today?
Well, as the marketing person and the person who spends a lot of time thinking about copy and messaging, your message, Aaron, at the Colorado River Outfitters Association conference really resonated with me about the value proposition of America Outdoors as an association. And what we do at Zebulon has a huge underlying component of what we do, especially with the Eddie leadership peer group, and then our financial planning and strategy services is to help outfitters clarify their value and then generate more of it. So what you said about American Outdoors Association value and then being able to clearly communicate that to the member base really resonated with us. And I wanted to open the floor to let you chat a little bit about what you feel American Outdoors value is and how maybe it's changed in the I think you said 3.5 months at your tenure so far.
Yeah, 3 months and 19 days, whoever's counting. Um, no, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and this is like we talked about, this is something that I've thought about a lot. And not just with America Outdoors, but with the outdoor space. And, previously I was with the Idaho Outfitters and Guides Association. And so I thought a lot about these types of questions there. But I guess, to the question, when I came on August, I guess. So when I came in on August, I realized pretty quickly that our value proposition had to evolve at America Outdoors. Not just in terms of what we offered, but in terms of what we represented and how we communicated it. So I guess like here's what I found. Like we had massive policy victories. Explore Act is one of the
Mhm.
biggest things to happen, not just for outfitters and guides, but in terms of like public access legislation, large coalition building public access legislation. One of the biggest things in decades, maybe ever, in terms of what it specifically is. We have waiver ban reversals with Park Service and with BLM and U.S. Forest Service. Those were enormous things that many organizations and people like me had been working on for a really long time. We had,
Yeah.
the executive order wage mandate repeals, federal shutdown responses, public lands, pushbacks. We had all these really big wins, and that's just like a short list, right? There are more. So real and substantive wins that had like fundamentally changed some of the like actual rules of the game for the industry. But a lot of our members didn't know about them, or if they did, they didn't know how to use them. So I think like and I guess like here's a deeper issue is that like outfitters are loud and passionate and bullish and stubborn and compassionate and earnest and principled. Like they like anybody
Damn,
else.
what a
Like they want
short
to see
list.
themselves, right? They want to see themselves. Yeah, hopefully that's an accurate enough summary. I think it is. But like
Feels spot
like
on to
anybody, they
me.
they want to see themselves in the organization that represents them. That's what we all want and the things that we support, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we should do. And so, like, while AO was doing the work, while we were getting those wins, we hadn't actually spent enough time staying true to what we were at our core, which was all of those things I just said, like bullish and loud and stubborn and compassionate and earnest and principled and all of those things in like a really loud way. So I guess my earliest recognition on the value proposition question was about like raising that clarity of purpose, of process, of identity with the organization. Um, like who we are as a national organization should be a mirror of who outfitters are as professionals, and what they care about in their own operations, which are these like wild experiences, these natural places, these meaningful connections with each other and with the landscapes, and doing things that make us better versions of ourselves. Like AO should be representing that. So I guess the value proposition was muddled, right? Like we're doing good stuff, but it had to change.
Mm.
And people, we have to find a way to reflect back the people that we represent on themselves.
So what's your vision, right? You came on in August, so 3 months and 21 days or something, whatever you said, who's counting?
I think you said 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 19. It's 19.
21 actual work days because we know he's not keeping it. It's a normal 8 to 5.
Sure.
But how like what is it that you anticipate? What is in the works with America Outdoors as you've been having this discussion with the team, with Karen and with all of the other staff members, with the board members? What is it that you're laying out for the organization for America Outdoors? And how does that continue to benefit outfitters in helping them grow their business, be more profitable, thrive as a community? Engage. I'm using some of your guys' keywords that you have on your website.
Yeah, no, which I love. Yeah. I mean, it's a big question, right? But I think ultimately one of the things beyond, and it maybe even wove it in there, I kind of brown out whenever I get excited about something, but I think beyond, like, I think in there somewhere is like clarity of purpose, clarity of process, right? Um, I think the clarity of purpose is the first part and really the biggest part. And it's not that, again, it's not that we weren't doing the right things, but we maybe weren't even explaining them to ourselves in the right way. Um, I think getting back to the core of like, why do we exist in the first place? Like, who are the people that we exist for? Like those top global level questions. Getting back to the core of who we are and who we need to be to effectively represent the industry is a core part of the vision. It always has to be. Is it good for the members? Is it good for the organization? Is it good for our partners? People like you, right? Like those have to be our guiding stars. Um, Beyond that, I think there's a lot of very practical and less sexy stuff that we have to, but that like really meaningful stuff that we have to do a better job at. And that means translating the things that we do, like translating those wins, translating that advocacy, not only in the sense of communicating it consistently and effectively so people know that this is happening, but also changing how we communicate about it so that these become things people can actually do something with. So we're not just saying explore pack or the explore pack pass and it's a huge deal, like go forth, right? We're saying like the Explore Act passed and it's a huge deal and it is wildly complicated and it involves changes to your permits and it involves changes to the way that processes previously operated and the people that you work with who are supposed to know how this works probably don't. And like you're going to have to help them understand it and work with them as partners. So like giving people actual understanding, actual tools, like things they can use on a day-to-day basis. I think that's a big part of the vision. And also just like broadening the tent, I think is, I guess that's zooming back out. I was going to go from global to local, but I lost it there. Like broadening the tent, we have a pretty broad, pretty diverse membership at America Outdoors for sure. But I think making sure that all of the different sectors in outdoor recreation, facilitated outdoor recreation, but all the different sectors in outfitting recognize who we are, not only and also see us as their voice on the national level and can be brought into the tent because we're going to need a more diverse membership and a more diverse outdoor recreation community to fight some of the fights we're going to have to fight in future that we're already fighting. We need more people on team.
One thing that we talked about too is you're talking about communication and information dissemination, communicating that value. One thing we talked about at that booth for an hour was the difference between, making key information public and keeping things gate kept within the membership, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about, probably a lack in that ability to communicate was not putting enough public stuff out there on the public platform that would be useful for attracting members who are like, wow, I didn't realize that my river or my, public lands or my permit or whatever it is that I'm operating on was underneath the umbrella of this because it was gate kept within the existing membership. So, finding that fine balance of getting enough content that's out there and available for everybody. And we're obviously proponents of lots of content creation because I mean content creation is what is helping all of us float. I mean Zebulon gives out a lot of free content like crazy. It's a great attracting tool, but at the end of the day, it's part of our core value on helping the outfitters, right? So we're not the best for keeping things gate kept.
You know
Anything that
what though? But I think like Zeb, I think you guys are. I think you found a really. I think you found a good balance. Like, and granted, like I'm not. I'm not what do they call it? Scraping. I'm not scraping those Zebulon sites any given day, right? But I think uh, we've been around each other enough. Like from what I've seen, like you do provide quite a bit of content, whether it's at presentations at different industry events or on your website or otherwise. You do provide quite a bit of like still meaningful content that people can like. I could go and pull resources from your site, and those would still be valuable to me, right? Like I could even sort of flesh out my own ideas around those. Um, Now, I'm not getting the full enchilada. Like, I'm not getting all of the core content. I'm not getting a lot of the value that underlies that content that you're sharing. Which is some of the conversations or like your personal insights when you're working with people one on one, or like within the Eddy, right? Like, that's not stuff that you're getting, but you're doing it enough that people see like this these people are smart. Like these people are putting these people get it. They're putting out stuff that I find is valuable that can be helpful to me, whether or not I end up, working with them directly. And I think that is like finding that balance is tough, right? But that is what we need to do what AO is going to do a better job of. And it's just part of like things we talked about, but it's part and parcel of shifting. Like the world has changed, right? Like 30 years ago, it would have been, you would have been able as an organization like ours to gatekeep information in a way that really maybe did work, at least, cynically from the membership development perspective. Like, hey, we have this white paper on X. And the only way you're going to get this white paper
Mhm.
on X is if you're a member of America Outdoors. And there are still resources like that, just like there are still, layers of your guys' resources that require like actually working with you, right? Um, but it's no longer the case. Like you don't have to be a member of America Outdoors to know that X piece of legislation passed, or even to use like an AI chatbot to explain it to you. Like you do need America Outdoors to figure out like how hard that chatbot is hallucinating. And like side note, it's hallucinating hard. Like ask an AI chatbot to analyze Explore for you and see what sort of garbage you get. It's like some of it's right, just enough that you think like you're actually getting real information. A lot of that stuff is not accurate.
We
So
need
I
to make
mean,
an Aaron Lieberman GPT so that we can ask you if how bad it's hallucinating and get
I
your
don't
take
know.
on it.
I think that could be beneficial for some other people. I think it'd be bad news for me because it pretty quickly take over what I'm capable of. But I guess all to say, like, I think that it's a really interesting issue, but I think you guys are a good example of a good balance in that. And that's something that it is tricky, but I'm trying to find a better balance for with America Outdoors. Like we can only be the national voice if everyone knows we exist, and whether or not they're a member sees us as the national voice. Like everybody's going to benefit from the things that I do, that America Outdoors does, whether or not they're members. That is true. Everyone is going to benefit from Explore. Like that was America Outdoors. Everyone, whether you're a member or not, you were going to benefit from America Outdoors, right? And from
Mhm.
Explore. But like, if you don't know about us, there's no reason for you to be a part of it, to support it, to like look for that next thing, right?
Well, that's something for you guys to hang your hat on, for you guys to actually get credit for all of that work too, and without that being available and readily available knowledge, it's just not known, right? It's not even known. It's not even visible. It's literally
Yeah.
something that is in the background that, again, is industry changing, broader industry changing, and that you guys were one of the main driving forces behind that. So you guys should get credit for it, and there should be awareness around that, and I would hope that more people, as time evolves, they start to see that value and understand the benefit that you guys provide too. We've been attending other conferences. Obviously, we go to like the state associations. Corey talked about Colorado River Outfitters Association. We do Idaho Outfitters and Guides. We're speaking at Montana Outfitters and Guides this year. And so this year we've actually made an interest to also go after, the non-Idaho in the or not non-outfitter in the name associations. And it was like and the reason why we went after that is because, in working with these broader tourism groups, especially outdoor recreation, tourism-based organizations, the challenges are identical. They
Mhm.
struggle with the same seasonalities. They struggle with the same personnel, cultural issues. They struggle with the same wage issues. The only difference is they have permitting, but it may not just be what outfitters classify as their permitting, right?
Yeah.
The distinguishing factors are so stinking minute, and that's why they're all able to get together in the eddy, whether they're a water sport based activity, running jet skis and pontoon boats, or a whitewater rafting company, or a hiking company, or lodging based. I mean, all of it's around
Yeah.
outdoor
Campsites.
recreation and getting people outside, right? And so, I think like with America Outdoors, I'm a proponent of you guys expanding beyond that and getting exposure to organizations like the Port, which is one we went to, because what you guys provide is so beneficial to even their members. They're not in they are inland, they're coastal usually, but the issues and the permitting components are variant, but it's still all so interrelated. You're still dealing with the same federal agencies. It's
Yeah.
just that they're not running horses, they're running jet skis. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and there is. I mean, I think, and ultimately that is part of what I think of as, it sounds entitled or lofty maybe, but like what I think of as America Outdoors' proper place,
Mhm.
sort of in this outdoor recreation community nationally. Like we should have a louder voice than we do because we punch above our weight, right? Well, maybe that's not even the right way to put it, but like I mean, David Brown, like David Brown, like a lot of people, I don't know how many people listen or how many people listen that are from the industry, but the guy's a legend.
Yeah.
Like it took him two decades. Like he was working on versions of Explorer, like predecessors to Explorer for decades. Like, but he ultimately was one of the starting points for this landmark legislation. And, his history and his sort of core of what he did professionally is based around America Outdoors. Ultimately, I guess getting back to what you were saying though, like America Outdoors should be a louder and more active voice in broader conversations around issues that may not be specific to like permitting on under the United States Forest Service or contracts with the National Park Service, et cetera, but around use and enjoyment of our public lands, of natural places, of a, a screen epidemic among the nation's youth, and like how important it is for our health, for like our health as a society, to make sure that kids not just can theoretically go outside, but understand, like have access to those experiences, like, and not just outfitted ones, right? Like we need to care about that from a broader perspective because we have really valuable things to say there. And so, like, whether the port or otherwise, I think there's a lot of different overlap with where outfitting is as an industry, and where we probably should be and where we're gonna go. So hopefully we'll see that up and we'll see.
And back to core values too. I know, Corey, you initiated this with the value prop, but also thinking about core values. Man, one of the things that I love about this industry and what, was a stimulus for us actually niching in it and hitting it so hard is the core values of this group, right?
Yeah.
Very family based, very family focused about getting people outside. We're not incredibly money hungry, industry compared to so many more. It's like money's a necessary evil almost, and we've got to be profitable to be sustainable. There's so many challenges when it comes to this industry that's working against it, right? The seasonality, the weather dependency, the
Mhm.
discretionary income component when it comes to like receded economies and things like that. Those are all necessary evils. Those are things we have to manage, but it's not why we're here, right? We're here for the people. We're
Yep.
here for nature. We're here for getting people outside.
The
And so
passion.
it's
Totally.
passion. It's that passion. The four P's of outfitting, I always say, is always led by passion. But what you just said too is it's like everybody I know in this industry is passionate about kids and like giving kids access to the outdoors.
Hmm.
Same thing with the people from the port. And like all of us, because we're all so family based, we have families or we're rich in our family lives and dynamics that like they are too. And even though
Hmm.
they're not an outfitter, they still show that certain value. And it comes down to it being such a core that they'll get behind it. I'm 110% getting behind, kids from out behind the screens and changing that future component because a few fold, right? If we're getting those kids out from behind the screens, we're helping with all of the, suicide issues, all those kind of rates, those problems, the bullying that's going on
Depression.
depression, those issues that are facing them now. But at that same time, those are going to be our employees in 5 to 6 years. Those are going to be the leaders of our organization 10 to 15 years. Those are going to be our primary customer bases 7 to 12 years from now. So there's a financial component and there's a management component to it too. But don't we want to, at our core, set our industry up for success by leaning into those elements now and leaning into those core values and getting those kids from out behind the screen? Everybody benefits, whether you're at the port or you're at America Outdoors. And I keep keying on the port because that's just one of those growing, sub-industry conferences that we went to, but they're ones of dozens that are all over the place that I think America Outdoors can absolutely lean into and provide a lot of value for.
Yeah, and first off, amen, man. Like I love all the things you were just saying. And it is one of the things, like whether it's outfitters or like all the people that outfitters work with, partner with, like people like yourselves, it is the thing, like the non-financial golden handcuffs is how I think of it, which like I should workshop that phrase because there's a better way to put it, right? But it's like the all the people around this community care about the right stuff. Like
Mhm.
to certain degrees from a business perspective, they may care about it like in improper proportions, right? Like you may have 90% passion where you need a little bit more percentages in the other P's. Like that is also probably true. But I think, yeah, it's totally the case. And I think if any, like outfitters do a great job of that too. Like the value first sort of way of life. I
Mhm.
mean, that's why they're in this industry. Nobody gets into outfitting because they're like, oh, like I'm going to make some money. Like, so I'm going to get into outfitting, right? Like that is not a thing that any sane person ever said. It's a
We talk a
low
lot.
margin.
We talk a lot about the passion in this industry, and we're trying to build up the business chops because there's not as much. But you can't take a business person who's that person who's like, oh yeah, I'm in it for the money, and then teach them the passion behind it. That doesn't work that direction.
Totally. And it's not to say, it's not to say like I know that one of the things that one of the myths that you bust or help bust with outfitters is like, oh, I can't like do something I'm passionate about and also profit, right?
Mhm.
And I like totally 100%. But like nobody who ended up as an investment banker because they want to make money like thought about outfitting as a viable alternative, right? Like that's not why ultimately it was the passion P first for sure that gets people into it. It's because outfitters care about all those core things you just talked about. Zeb. It's like they care about clean rivers, healthy wildlife populations, like these natural landscapes. They care about people having meaningful experiences with each other and with the natural world, and and about introducing next generations to it for all the reasons that should be obvious, but that have somehow become this abstraction.
Mm.
And they also care about running safe, ethical, well-led operations, and hopefully being able to make a living out of it that isn't just scraping by. But yeah, it is a values-driven industry, and I'd say industry in the broadest sense.
Mhm.
And I think so. I'll say outfitters have done a really good job of that. I think America Outdoors, and I don't want to like poo-poo us, right? Like I think America Outdoors has kicked major ass, like over the decades. Like I think objectively that is true. I think one of the steps in our evolution, though, is just doing a better job of the thing that outfitters are already doing and have always done the best job at. Getting back to the like that core value proposition, like doing a better job of reflecting those values as an organization that our members reflect on a daily basis and that they embody in the services that they provide, right?
Mm.
And that's like even one of those touching points too. You acknowledge that during your CROA presentation, but during our CROA presentation, Corey has this phenomenal slide that's as ye sow shall sow you reap, right?
Yeah, I like that one.
It was really good because and her visual that she has all of these like disbeliefs about outfitting. Oh, I'm not in it for the, I'm not in it for the money, and it's not a passion fueled businesses. Come from the school of hard knocks. Kids these days they just don't want to work. It's a phenomenal visual. I'm sure Corey, you're going to overlay that on the visual so people can see it.
I
But at
actually
the
have it up because we are working on that is going to make a cameo in our America Outdoors presentation in a couple weeks here.
Perfect.
Well, it's so perfectly timed because the thing that precedes that is the trends that the industry has been going from 2019 until now, right? We all had the COVID peak. We have the dropping revenue numbers. We have the dropping volume of passengers. Fortunately, like through the pandemic, we were able as an industry to increase our price points to cover some inflating costs. But those overhead items, man, you look at our visual, it's skyrocketing like this. Demand is going like this. You look at this forward the next 3 years, it is not a good equation for the industry, financially and sustainably. So that as ye sow shall sow your reap comes into a play. I think the industry is really at a pivotal point where, those that are going to try and do things the way they had been doing prior to the pandemic, leaning into a lot of those you know, disbeliefs that, worked for them back then, just financially and within the new economic climate that's coming out of COVID, uh, the writing's on the wall. That's not going to be sustainable. So I think what you guys are doing and what we're talking about here in terms of getting back to those core values, getting back to those roots, reshifting them, and not losing the core values, but leaning more into them, getting back to those cores and looking at those cores and being like, how do we want to transform this industry and move this industry forward? Because if we keep doing the way we've been doing it prior to the pandemic and with the writing on the wall going ahead, it's not going to be good for the industry, right? And especially when you look at, you were talking in our past conversations about, the potential land grabs that are coming in and how government agencies are trying to privatize these public lands. And like now we're talking some big macroeconomic kind of impacts that can be the strings to Pandora's box. I think getting back to those cores, as you're describing, and I love what you're doing at AO already, and reminding ourselves what are those and where is it that we want this to go. Not only the industry can
Well,
benefit right
I
now.
mean, it's kind of it's interesting. I was just thinking as you're talking there, it's kind of part of the industry, and maybe it's more AO than the industry. Like part needs to get back to basics, like or do better at basics. That's definitely the AO part. I think outfitters less so. Like
Well, I love what
remember,
you mentioned. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. I think
no,
there's
go
a
ahead.
headphone connection, but I love what you mentioned earlier about finding that clarity of purpose. And something that we talked about at CROA was a book that we really have read recently and really recommend. We've done a lot in the Eddy and with our clients is the Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And you mentioned
Yeah,
you
such
read
a good
it.
book.
That's just another way of saying start with why is finding the clarity of your purpose. Like, why are we here and getting back to the basics?
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's definitely some of that, right? But I was just thinking as you were talking, Zeb, like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, and other structural shifts in markets. And
Mhm.
I guess like so pre-pandemic, correct me where I'm wrong. Pre it's going to be a lot of places. Just a heads up, you're going to want to start getting your fingers out,
Take my notes.
or take yeah, you got a pin, Corey. Pre-pandemic, like many outfitters were like underpricing, right, relative to their value. Like they could have priced higher. During pandemic, a lot of people caught up to that reality. Am I right so far? Where am I wrong so far?
No, you're right. So literally in that visual that we did at CROA, and so we're going to have an updated visual for America Outdoors, but the water sports national pricing in the water sport realm was $85 per passenger 2019, and when it hit its peak in 2024 it was 160. So at least within the data set that we have access to from water sports based activities all across the nation, whitewater rafting, jet skiing, paddle boarding, anything water based, it dang near doubled. And so there was, I think, you know, a lot at place that outfitters felt like they needed to, right? There's a lot going on. Rising costs, record high inflation, some of the highest wage increases in American history taking place, they finally caught up to that value. And I think we're still shy of that quote unquote value, but that's more detailed discussions. But to your answer,
Well,
average
and I get, yeah, go
85
ahead.
to 160, and we'll have AOs national across all activities when we are presenting at AO, but we don't have that deep data in order yet to tell you those numbers.
Yeah, and I guess where that was coming from was ultimately there's some places where as a whole we need
Mhm.
to get back to like clarity of origin, clarity of purpose, like what is our why, right?
Mhm.
Um again, I think we have it. We need to do better at explaining it and representing it or embodying it. But and outfitters are already good at it. I guess the thought I had as you were talking is like, but in some cases, outfitters really need to get away from like their core, right? Like it's core in the sense of like where they came from. It's like, well, like we always kept prices were this. When costs went up, prices went. They're just like basic assumptions or equations that always sort of guided their behavior from the business through the business lens. And that's where we probably don't need to go back to our core. That's probably where we need to be more adaptive.
Mhm.
And I started to go into asking about the numbers, and I realized that I was pretty quickly going to be outpaced in my ability to keep up, even my understanding with your explanation. But I've been thinking about this a lot because we got, as we were talking about before we started here, like we do a survey every year, and I spent a lot of time in the survey data this year trying to unpack what is going on. And I'm not sure. I'll be interested to get your take when we present on it too. It should be a good segue. But I mean, there seems to be, I mean, one of my main takeaways from it seems to be a lot of people said, like, what is the thing most impacting your operation? Right. Like that was one of the questions we asked. And
Mhm.
most people said lack of demand for core services. Like if they were down, sorry, if they, for those who were down 24 to 25, it's like, what do you think was the greatest impact on you being down? That's not how the question was framed, but it was demand for core services being down. Right. But then you look at those same respondents and their volume hadn't actually changed,
Mhm.
like they were doing the same number of people. And like this is not true in every case, but like broad lens, line graph. It's actually true statistically too. But in any case, like the volume didn't actually seem to be the thing, right? And then so I looked at pricing. It's like, okay, for those who said that they were either down or up, and who said that the demand for core services was either a driver of their being up or their being down, up and down in terms of their profitability. Like if it wasn't volume, then like if their volume was static, was it their pricing? Like did they increase prices? And like pricing had some nexus, but overall it seemed to be like ultimately grounded in their base market. Well, what I'm defining loosely as like their base market position to start, like how
Mhm.
much real ongoing demand they had, maybe how like deeply penetrated they were in the market in their area, could have had something to do with location. All to say, there seem to be a lot of like misconceptions, which is not, I don't say as like a criticism of the folks who are responding, but more so like this is complicated stuff, and people's sense of why things were happening in their operation, like why they were profitable or why they weren't profitable, generally didn't seem to stack up against the other things they were saying about their operation, right? And
Mhm.
so all to say that's a long-winded way of getting back to saying that I guess in some ways, maybe to the stuff that you guys work with folks on, like in some ways people need to update that. Like they're thinking about things the way they've thought about things in the past, and they're just making assumptions based on things that they assumed were true in the past, but that statistically don't necessarily seem to be true.
I always, the whole assumption that we increase our price, therefore we lost demand. Oh my goodness, that is one that is everybody assumes, oh, we lost demand because we increased our price. Pricing in our industry is likely the least influential component to why demand dropped, right? And so like we go after that from all different angles. And I think it comes back down to this core and the transitions that have happened. It's been a really rocky road the last 5 years. There's a lot that's taken place. We talked a lot about your guys' wins at AO, but in order for those to be wins at AO, that means that there were some underlying issues that they were attacking and facing, pushing these operators around, right?
Mhm.
And so like like this comes back down to that element. It's time to get back to those roots and get back to that core. And so, one of the things that we're helping with, especially with those operators and defining that, is let's stop worrying about what's going on around you. Let's stop worrying about those comparables and let's just define what it is that you need for you and yours, right? Let's
Mhm.
define what it is that you need for your family, for your take home. What is it that you need for your guides, your management staff? What is it that you need within your particular operation? And then let's look at the other variables, such as maybe your activity volume, your number of passengers, the number of trips you run, and we'll arrive at that need-based price, right? And so, like, that need-based price, it kind of helps people get comfortable with a couple things. Like, one, we know what we need to charge to be sustainable. We know what we need to charge to pay the wages to the employees that we want, to be able to have that income, to have that profitability that's going to afford our future growth. So we know what we're getting after and why we need to price it. But at the end of the day, to your point earlier, I think it's still far less than what our true value proposition is from a consumer perspective. And coming rewinding back to the start of what you were saying there, where we came from, we're pricing as if we're selling it to equally capable individuals who have the same values and the same strengths that we do. And so, like, it's like the industry was set up pricing it to sell to themselves. Whereas, like, right now, it's like you guys there needs to be that shift in recognizing that we're selling to people that aren't ourselves. We're selling to people that are vastly different than what we are. Yeah, they have the same core values of getting outside, but guess what? They're coming from vastly different backgrounds, cities, metros, income levels, histories, all of these components. And we don't know where they're coming from in terms of what they're trying to get after. There's a really good
Our
book.
generation, sorry, I keep interrupting you, but the
Yeah.
three of us, we're the first real digital natives. And you guys were talking about the screen epidemics and getting people outside. So people older than, we're talking about Gen X, and baby boomers, they grew up outside. Anyone
Mhm.
in the 30s, early 40s and younger has grown up inside looking at screens. So you're talking about getting back to basics, and you're not selling to the people, your peers, you're selling to people who have never been outside before. And that's obviously a gross exaggeration, but you can't assume that your visitors and your guests have nearly as many hours logged as you have in the great outdoors.
Yeah, your market has changed for sure.
Mhm. And so with the market changing, our prices need to change as well, and also, I don't know, it's an enjoyable thing. I nerd out on the pricing. I mean, that's one of those things that, like, we've been speaking.
I mean, thank God somebody does, man. The more I spent a lot of time, like a lot of time for me, like it was a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in the data from our survey, and a lot of that time in volume and pricing. And the more time I spent in that, the sadder I got. Like it's like I am very much I'm a guide at heart. I've been a guide for 20 years, and like I very much felt like the people I represent, the more time I spent in there, it's like I don't want to look at this.
Mhm.
I don't want to deal with this. So thank God there's the use when you're dad always.
That hurts the heart too, just knowing that, those are the struggles that they have. And honestly, they don't need to be struggles, and that comes down to, again, content creation and you providing content and us providing content to be able to give the tools to the people who are supporting. Because, although we only have the bandwidth to work with maybe 2% of the industry, maybe 1% of the industry's number of outfits at most. We're not a massive team, but we
Mhm.
would love to be able to provide it to where we can hit 98% of them and change the impact for 98%, just to get that extra income. So, maybe an outfitter who wouldn't have otherwise been able to put their kid through college can at least, you know, pay 15% of their college's tuition. Like that, that's what drives us.
Yeah,
So. Mhm.
which is admirable.
So, you mentioned like the data, right? And so you did this survey. I'm really curious, like what were some of those, main themes that came out of the survey and main points that are really, from your perspective, the pulse on the industry's hottest topics right now? Like, what is it that they're most concerned about and most interested in um, resolving or getting after in the 2026 year?
And we don't want to steal your thunder before the conference. So if you want to just give us a teaser, we'll take it.
Okay. Yeah. A teaser, like I I love solving problems. Well, I hate problems, and so I love solving them. Um, so I tend always, therefore, to focus on like the problems, right? Which is probably a broader character flaw. So all to say, like the things that, off the top of my head really stand out are like, all right, when I look at this, what are the problems that need to be solved? Not that I or AO can just unilaterally do those things, but um, just to say those are the sort of the things that stood out to me. And some of the things that stood out to me overall, I mean, this isn't a problem yet, but overall, like there's actually a pretty even mix of folks who just in terms of profitability.
Mhm.
So not, yeah, just in terms of profitability, not by other metrics. But just in terms of profitability, there's actually a pretty even mix of folks who were um, up versus down, just to put it simply, which surprised me because, I talk to folks in the industry all of the time and across different states and across different sectors or different parts of the same sector. And pretty consistently, like what I was hearing, when I say pretty consistently, I mean like 90% of what I was hearing was just anecdotally was like, we're down.
Mhm.
And so I fully went in expecting to see everyone being down.
Mhm.
But that was not the case. I mean, 30 was like 38% of folks, of respondents were um, up in terms of profitability. And most of those attributed it to, you know, some things that will sound obvious, but like, strong demand for core services, or they had diversified products and services, or they like reinvested in sort of direct sales, like human level sales, or they did some different things with cost management. Um, and I list those like they're not the specific things, but those were, I'm pretty sure that is in order of the specific things. I can check myself later, but I'm pretty sure that's right. I think about 30% of the market or 30% of respondents were down in terms of profitability. So less than we're up, fewer than we're up. And about 30% were stable-ish, like, right about it where they were previously in terms of profitability. So not isolating for, I guess that's one of the things that surprised me in the findings. I fully expected to see more people responding that that their profitability was down based on what I was hearing anecdotally. And so, maybe that speaks to how people feel about how they did versus how they did when they actually start putting it on paper or like actually just responding to things one by one, which I can understand, or at least, understand emotionally. Um, another,
So before
another, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I want to give you some confirmation bias in that if, as I'm thinking through our client base, we did have a handful that did drop, and those drops were due to isolated regions, in that there actually truly was drop in demand in isolated regions. So I'm confirming
Mhm.
that you said that at the beginning. I just wanted to say we noticed that as well. There are pockets in the United States that we did recognize some dropping demands. But at that same time, in those same exact areas, it was dropping demands for the lower price point activities. We're talking less than 300 bucks a day, but the higher price
Mhm.
point activities, like 3 grand plus, per person, man, those ones just went off like hotcakes this year. So I think there was some economics in play there. Um, a lot of people were flat, and we had some people that had really strong profitable years. And granted, a lot of those are intention, right? They were intentionally flat because they were making investments in things, or
Yep.
last year they had a big drop, so they made improvements to like their human capital, and more specifically within their reservation group, to get good, strong reservationists. And then they had like 40% climbs this year because they made that investment. So, it's all over the board, and it's not a one glove for the whole industry this year. So I just wanted to echo that we saw the same exact thing even within our
I'll
client
give you
base.
another, I'll give you another while we're sharing confirmation biases, which is kids, if you're listening, this is how good statistics works. You find your friends who agree with you, and then you look for the outcomes that you want to see and choose the data to fit that outcome. That's just responsible business planning, right?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
We
No,
have
but
AI
I
for
actually am going to give you some confirmation bias though, because the one of the other things that it is correlative for sure at this sample size. 100%. Right. Well, even that is misleading, but it's correlative. It is very likely correlative at this sample size. But one of the interesting outlying correlations for folks who respondents who were profitable or who were were profitable at 24 to 25 um, was specifically that they also were those respondents inordinately who said that they had invested in reservations, like in reservations and in I can't remember off the top of my head how it was framed in the survey, but basically staff in particular, staff and systems for like direct communication and outreach, marketing, whatever, but or like service more so to potential clients. So like somebody
Hmm.
calls and they talk to a human, that sort of thing.
yeah. We're not going to
Yeah.
say we predicted it, but we predicted it. That's why we had our group sales accelerator last fall, right? Because last fall we knew that the general booking numbers were going to drop this year. I mean, that's just what the general trend was showing in terms of general purchasing, because we had a 30-year high in 2021. So the industry's 30-year high. Precedence is going to say we're not going to have a high like that for 30 years. So general bookings are going to go down. So we came up with the Yeti Accelerator because operators had an opportunity to control their group sales. So the
Yeah.
Eddy Accelerator literally went through market research on, using the Pareto 30, identify those 20% of your audience bases that produce 80% of your revenue, creating content and creating language, targeting those groups specifically to then get after and ask for referrals and make sales, group-based sales to people within that network who are already know, liking, and trusting you and loving you. So, but this is forcing outfitters to shift from being the everybody's, service provider, which is typically what the industry is, to start isolating those key audiences. So, like even in the Eddy, we literally walked the people through that. And the companies who completed it were the ones that saw 40% increases, upwards of 40% increases in volume because of it. In the same exact year, this is something we couldn't predict how ChatGPT was going to take over searches, right? So
Right.
that was I think a big driver too in that drop in volume. We didn't even talk about that, but like not only is there that 30-year high dropping in general volume, generally speaking, but people's search went from Google search to being able to click on Google Ads to populating in the AI overview. And so we noticed that like in June as a company. And so we told the operators right now, take the cap off of your Google ad spend and let's just see what happens for 2 weeks. The outfits who did that, yeah, they were paying real
Take
high price per
take the
click.
cap off, meaning like stop limiting the amount that you're spending on Google Ads for 2 weeks to see what happens.
Yep.
Okay, so go on.
Okay.
So what happened is those operators that did it, boom, their booking numbers went back up to normal. They went from being behind to back up. Sure, they weren't making as high of a margin because they were paying that price per click, but they were still getting the volume. And so they
Mm.
carried that the rest of the year. Google had this like pay to play game. It was ridiculous.
But how
So,
did that interact with AI searches? So like if I'm using like the new ChatGPT Atlas browser and like I have to try to find my way to Google, right? Like it's just going to give me like,
Crazy.
oh, I'm the AI chatbot. You wanted to go on a river trip? Like hike this mountain, right? Like that's just me talking crap about AI because I love and hate it, but that's not actually true. It actually is pretty good. Anyway, that's not the point. Point is like if more people were using AI to search, how was spending money on Google ads helping them?
so I don't know. I don't know the
Is
mechanics
it
of that.
that like that was still the search results that the AI was pulling from? So it was just sending like the highest results back to that person?
No, I think it just came down to people would maybe not go as far through the Google ads and through the organic. And so maybe they just, again, they still somehow managed to make it on the screen and then clicked, right?
My
So,
understanding
Yeah.
is also the AI populated, the AI overviews in if you're in Google, so you're not in the ChatGPT Atlas browser, you're in Google, the AI overviews for a while were top and front and center, but then
Oh yeah.
they made the switch so that ads were still up top and then the overview was below. So it's the wild, wild west. It was when everything is changing, and so people's ads were still getting some visible buy time.
at the end of the day, it was
Yeah.
theory. Not everybody took us on the theory and tested it, but those that did, it worked. And
Yeah.
then we had people mid-June, mid-July kind of catch on and they started doing it too. And it worked. I mean, it worked to help recover. They went from being, maybe 15% down in volume to 5% down in volume, or 3% down to up 4% in volume, just depending on where it was at. So, sorry, we
Yeah.
ended up going on a tangent from there. I didn't mean
No, that'll happen when you talking to me when you talk to me too, just in general. I mean, I, like super top level other findings, like because these, and I could go through a couple of these fast because they're not going to surprise anybody who's in the industry, not least you guys. But insurance is like a five alarm fire. I mean, like the terrifying part is it has been for a while, right? Like this is not new, but it is getting worse. So like the number, I mentioned this just before we started, right? But like the number in the survey data, 90% of people had increases in their premiums. And there was a question in there about like, claims. So to try to isolate for that. We didn't have, it could be that people just didn't list it, but we didn't have anybody say that they had claims. But 90% had increases in their premiums, and a significant proportion of that 90%, the plurality of that portion was in the moderate range of 0 to 10%, which, if depending on how much money we're talking about, is an enormous amount of money. Like this could be
Mm.
hundreds of thousands of dollars for certain businesses, right? But at the very least, proportionate to your overall profitability, it's going to be a big hit regardless. And a non insignificant proportion of those respondents was over 30% increases in their premiums. Like
Mm.
the level of increases in like the insurance, liability insurance, general liability insurance, and sort of connected policies is a runaway train on fire. Like that's a doozy. So that's not surprising. The degree to which the breadth of people who experience premium
Yeah.
increases is surprising, even against the context of like something that was already in a bad place. The other things that came out of it are probably not also too surprising. Like there's a lot of stuff that gets complicated that I think I have some ideas on, but really it's just going to be presented for information for folks. Some of the stuff about like volume profitability, like why do you think you were up? Why do you think you were down? But some of like the biggest pressures, insurance was definitely up there. Wages is definitely up there. It wasn't included as an explicit question for, relative to profitability or whatever else, but there was a question about, your ability to hire or retain a sufficient number of staff for peak demand.
Mm.
And there was a fairly, I mean, not huge, but a notable delta between those places. Um, and which it, maybe that's tied to wages, maybe that's tied to culture, right? Which is something you guys talk about. I don't know, but it is a thing to some degree. Um, and permitting, like permitting processes, which just underscores like, what I know, but what one of the things, like speaking of vision or like what we're focused on, one of the things that we're really going to lean into going forward is just like finding practical ways to help people navigate these wildly like complex Kafkaesque nightmare scenes of like permitting and whatever else in a way that they can actually like get home from working 18 hours outside and wrap their heads around like that they don't need to have a special degree in, that we could do for them. So I mean, permitting processes, permitting delays, that was another
Good
doozy
for
too. So
you.
So, Aaron, I just want to call out, you literally just set up what I typically call the 4 Ps of outfitting, right? So we already talked about
that's how insightful I am.
you are. Your data just your insights on your data just proved it. The
It was a
four P's of
softball.
outfitting, or the
Mhm.
four outfitting. And actually, I was at the port, and they call out a potential fifth one that I could consider into this. But the four P's of outfitting involved passion. Everybody's passionate, right?
Hmm.
There's permitting, and obviously that's the last one that you acknowledged, and what you guys provide a ton of value in and supporting people with. And the other two are the other typical challenges they face, and that's profitability and people. Those are the four P's of outfitting. And so people love, I mean, this industry is super heavy on its people, right? But for some reason, even though we're a very people-oriented industry, they have a lot of issues surrounding people. And a lot of
Yeah.
it's just because of, from our perspective as being like CPAs and MBAs more so than anything else, is it's just because they don't have the business, you know, installed component to it that can help alleviate some of those people mechanical issues. But again, four P's of outfitting: passion, permitting, people, and profits. And you just said that those are literally the four issues on your the top issues on the survey.
Yeah, those are definitely, I mean, those are definitely some of the core areas. Yeah, and people, people is tough in the seasonal industry, depending on how seasonal you are in this industry. But it's, I mean, not that seasonality is the reason. Like, we can't just use that as a crutch, right? It's not like that's not why maybe like the person who's guiding for somebody else is no longer guiding for you. That may be the reason why the 19-year-old who like went to a different college or decided that they need to get an internship is no longer guiding for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess like my overall, for what it's worth, in the trends front, it's again, I focus on problems, so I don't paint. I need to do a better job of painting like more accurate, if not rosier, pictures.
Is
Um,
that the fifth
but
P in your world? There's people permitting
positivity.
profits and problems.
Oh, yeah, yeah, problems. Yeah, exactly. Problems just for fun. No, but I mean, I think overall, like, I think what the big takeaway would be like things. There are some real pressures on the industry right now, like real pressures on the industry. Like insurance is wild, right?
Mm.
Permitting is hard, and like we have fewer people that are dedicated to doing it, who understand it, that are dedicated to doing so by their job title. um like all those things are real, all these pressures are real, wages keep on increasing, prices keep on increasing, all of that. And yet, like overall, in terms of how the industry did, it looked really resilient. Like
Right.
30% or so were stable,
Mm.
38% were profitable. Like even if they didn't feel like they were doing well, they were still actually on the whole doing pretty good.
Mm.
Um, and
Yes.
I think like that should be hopeful for us. And I think also like while it is true that more and more, especially as we go down generationally, like more and more people are like retreating into themselves and into screens and into isolation and all those things, that just like we saw with COVID, that there's a backlash to that at the same time. And that there is this large cadre across generations of people who for like recognize that, and for that reason, like want more than ever to be able to feel like they're connected to things that are real and that matter, and to people that matter, that they like, and to do things that feel like they're alive and not watching it on TV because they're alive and doing it and not watching it on TV. But also, we like fewer and fewer people had the privilege of growing up doing these things. And
Mhm.
like some of that is access, some of that is economics, some of that is just culture. But I mean, I
Hmm.
think that's also why, like, whether it's outfitters specifically or folks in outdoor recreation tourism, it's like why, lofty as it sounds, like we have a real obligation. Like we're serving a real and growing need. Like more people need more help doing
Mm.
these things, finding these things, figuring out how to access these things, like where, where to even to go, let alone how to do the thing. So I think overall, like, again, I sort of front loaded the negativity, but I think overall, the trend survey is like, hey guys, I know that last year felt pretty rough. Like that felt like a back alley bare knuckle brawl. But, and like for some of you, it for sure was, right? But overall, like things, it's not like the COVID boom. It's not all wine and roses, but we're doing pretty good. And
Mhm.
like, I think people are like, I think the demand is like, people still want what we provide ultimately, just like we want to keep on providing it.
Mhm. Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
here,
I'm
here.
with you. Yeah. I think on that element of getting people outdoors, that's what it comes down to, and just recognizing the intrinsic value. I think that comes back to originally the beginning part of it, and recognizing also, our value proposition post-pandemic has changed and with the changing generations and recognizing that um, it's still an industry of fun,
Mhm.
but might be more of a necessitated fun versus just, another entertainment option for people to get after.
More intentional.
Yeah.
hmm and then communicating it too, right? And so how do we get into those other elements that help with the sustainability, profitability, supporting the people, still being passionate for doing it is maybe we have to think differently about how we get that information out there. Back to AO, creating that extra content that makes it public and available. Maybe operators, as small as they are, need to get in kind of content creation so they can start populating not just in AI searches, but to find those loyalists for those key audiences and to start honing in on priorities, the start with why component, honing in on who your target audiences are, recognizing their language and what they use and what they seek, because a Girl Scout group is going to have a different value proposition from a corporate group, right? And so, to know those languages and to try and get after what they're trying to accomplish and to build content for those so you could hit those people in those marks. And I think
Yep.
that's the biggest underlying opportunity too for operators right now is we as an industry start to isolate, less be everything to everybody and be more isolated to this is who we are. This is our one offer for our one audience. And yeah, we might attract people from all across the nation, but at the end of the day, if we need to have 10,000 butts and boats, let's have 10,000 butts and boats of the same audience because it's going to be a better value delivery for that people. And maybe we can charge a price point where we only need to get 6,000 butts and boats, and the extra 4,000 is literally icing on the cake, you know, uh,
Yeah.
because we can charge a higher price point due to better messaging.
Yeah. And because authenticity to what you are at your core, whether as a business or otherwise, is ultimately going to be the only thing that's going to differentiate you, right? From like, I mean, I thought it was interesting in your presentation at CROA. I mean, not that it's like you're not telling people stuff that if they think about it, they don't know, but that's how a lot of insight works, right? Like every brand new thought or like, every meaningful thought you have is the basis of a brand new cliche. But it's like, which doesn't diminish it. It's still insightful. But like looking at everybody's websites, it's like and you're kind of calling people out like you have the same website. You have the same website. It's like the opposite of an Oprah moment. Like look under your chair, you get a card. So it's like your website is the same.
Yep.
Uh, that's what you get was I was about to turn to the fake audience. That's what you get was Zeb's presentations. If you're the opposite Oprah, it's not
Comes
true.
yes.
No, but I thought like but like that struck me. Like when you were talking about it, it's like, yeah, like that's true. And I'm terrible at design. Like we're AO's in the process of redoing our website. And I've thought about that a couple times, but also I just like can't put my head there. But in any case, I think what stuck with me in that portion is what you were just talking about, which is ultimately like you have to get back to what you are
Mhm.
fundamentally, communicate that authentically and well to the people that are looking to hear it. Like find out who that is.
And the
Like and
audiences are
yeah.
customers and your employees. We haven't even talked about that, but that gets back to the people side of it, to figure
Mhm.
out
Mhm.
that core as leaders and to communicate that core to the next level, those managers. And that's how you get those loyalist employees. And really, honestly, the compassion and sincerity and authenticity from the employee base who resonate with you that will eliminate two-thirds of so many of the issues that we hear on a daily basis. Because um, for those who are listening, look up Gallup Q12 and start adopting Q12 in your business because that's such a huge component to it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you think about quick? I mean, kind of related, but I've been thinking about, especially with like the entrance of AI and how that is changing how people search for things, how people like relate to information, like even the internet broadly.
Mm.
Like I I've been thinking about that. And I've been thinking about a presentation that I listened to actually at a POGA, Professional Outfitters and Guides of America meeting last spring. And this guy, like I can't remember his name off the top of my head, tribal marketing maybe. I'll have to look that up. But he wrote a book about this. Like, but anyway, he's trying to get all of his clients to move to back primarily to traditional marketing. And like part of his argument for this was like the value of like the infinity information like approach is diminishing. Like people can go on and they can find 15 different competing websites. They could find yours, like if you try to compete, and they can find another 15 different websites, but like ultimately the personal hook is going to be the thing that like matters more and more as more things become impersonal. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I do have a couple. Corey, would you like to
Fire
interject?
away. You're like antsy in your seat. Go for it.
So two things, right? There's infinite amount of information that's out there, right? So that's a lot of noise to disseminate through. Okay. So I agree. And then again, we noticed this too when it came to the group sales accelerator and getting back to traditional marketing and recognizing who is your key audience, what's the terminology, and what's your hook, right? And so historically, there wasn't a whole lot of noise that was out there. So you could, potentially put some pieces out and maybe get after that, or maybe literally walk around your local businesses and drum up local businesses by that hook. Well, I think in today's world, because there's so much information that's out there, you need to be ultra refined on that and ultra defined and then still put out content. And I'm going to tell the story on how we attracted Robert in correlation to that in a minute, okay? But when it comes to like that, the get back to traditional, I think we do got to get back to the traditional and defining who our audiences are, what we're trying to get after, what we're trying to put out there, and to resonate with the audience and what people are wanting to purchase. Okay. The other thing too is when it comes to AI, like we're obviously getting more and more familiar with it. Like we've been doing the AI Accelerator, and we've been doing a lot of, outfitters have been using AI to create content that's attractive to AI, but also trying to do like use AI to do other functions within the business. I've also through this process been adopting AI more personally. And so like I'm starting to pick up on, wow, these responses are off kilter. Like the hallucinations were happening a lot, but even now, as evolved and as detailed as Grok can get, the one that's supposed to be the professional of all professionals, it's supposed to be the doctorate of all doctorates of every profession. I had a conversation with Grok about a trip that I was taking with the family, and like I said, this is who we are, this is the size of family, this is where we're going to be, this is what I want to do with my kid. Can you make some suggested things to do? And I had this great 20, 30-minute conversation, and Grok was asking phenomenal questions, and I was getting all jazzed about this Lego thing that I was going to be able to take my kid to that was built around Ninjago, which is like his favorite character, supposedly there in Springfield, Missouri. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. He's gonna love this. Well, I go to actually look up the website that Grok told me to go to. The place didn't even exist. I'm just like,
Yeah,
oh, I
exactly.
am so glad I did not tell my kid about this trip, right? Like I had to do
Yeah.
that information. So, I'm hopeful that as people get more and more embedded with it, there's going to be more criticism, more critical thinking surrounding it, especially on the important things. Okay. Um, and in order for it to be effective, we have to have good content out there and that continued messaging. So, maybe as it gets stronger and better, we can only feed it the information that we want it to get, right? We don't want it coming up with its own conclusions that are wrong. So, how do we contradict that? Well, with good, clear, articulated content. So
As
that's
we
the
get deeper into our accelerator on AI, we've talked about the concept of EEAT. So that's experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And that works both for traditional SEO and for AI in that you have like it's like good content. You can't just be creating fluff or slop. And similar to your question, Aaron, about going back to traditional marketing, if you are still creating, no matter what method you're distributing the message, if the message is still clear and true, that's what's going to resonate.
And so that gets into the story on how Robert came to be a part of Zebulon, right? So Robert worked for this other company and he's looking for a career change, has had no connections or correlations to Zebulon in anything. So Robert goes into AI and he, tells AI, this is my profession, this is, who I am, this is what I want to do. He's like, provide me some companies that, I could basically have my dream job at. And is kind of, to my understanding, how he put it in there. Well, he said it populated three companies, Zebulon and then two other ones. And so he looked at the other companies. He's like, oh no, I don't care to work for those. But he was really intrigued by Zebulon. So he followed us on LinkedIn. And then he saw Corey's post that we were hiring a financial manager recently. And so Robert was one of the first applicants of like 30 that we went through or something like that. And he ended up being the guy that we hired. And so, prime example of
It's a professional AI love story.
it worked out well, and like
Our
That's
professional
like
meet
it's
cute.
like the 2020. It's like Sleepless in Seattle 2025.
Yeah.
well, it
Yeah.
is. And yeah, right. That's funny. Um, he was the first interviewee we had, and every interview after that was comparing how did everybody else do compared to
Yeah, he
Robert.
set the bar.
And he ended up being a lot pricier than what we were originally anticipating, but that was the process, right? And like we're super happy for him to be here, and he's doing so well with the audience base. But it comes down to if we weren't putting out content, we wouldn't have populated in his AI search, and then we couldn't have started that journey, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's that same story when it comes to consumers, when it comes to employees, and navigating this future world just as operators too, when it comes to the
yeah,
front.
man. We're just entering such an interesting, I mean, terrifying but interesting time
Mhm.
with, I mean, even just specifically with regard to the industry, like
Hmm.
with discovery of experience and value of experience. And those things, like they're on these, like not parallel, but like orbital planes around each other. It's like the discovery process is shifting in fundamental ways. And it is somehow tied to the value proposition of the operator or of the company or of the people, but it's also tied fundamentally, like the more abstract everything seems to become in the world around us, like the more AI is a thing and we're questioning whether whatever we see on TV or whatever is
It's
real.
real.
Who wrote this? Like as reality becomes, like, is called more into question on a day-to-day basis, like the draw to, like, I don't doubt that the tree that I just ran into, like, is real, right? That's maybe a bad example for selling the industry. Let's not use that one. I don't doubt that the horse between my legs, like the smell of its mane is real, right? Like I don't doubt that the pine tree is near me and that I can feel the breeze. Like those things are true. Those things are real. Like I don't doubt adrenaline coursing through me or the source of it. Like I think that draw is going to be stronger than ever. Like
As a
the
company,
deeper we go in, but the discovery process to get to that thing that that you need intrinsically is like weirder and weirder. It's
yeah.
like you're going through the matrix to find to find like this basic experience. I don't know.
Um,
I don't, there's not really a question or even a statement there. It's just we're entering this really weird time. I'm interested to see how we navigate it. I hope we can help, right? But I'm interested to see how we do, like how everyone does trying to navigate it.
I've got two novel Zebulon ideas that have become cliche, right? That I've been saying over the past couple years. The first one was the pricing thing that I did at AO like 4 years ago when I started working on pricing at AO. My statement was we got to stop thinking like outfitters and start thinking like consumers when it comes to defining our value proposition. We got to literally put ourselves in their place and listen to them and the words that they're saying on the value that we create for them, and then using that verbiage, right? So that was we got to stop thinking like outfitters and start thinking about consumers when it comes to our pricing. The other thing that's on this component, and I think as you're just describing then, talking about the horse's mane, is because there's so much noise out there and because people are wanting to pre-experience that relationship even before they go to it, especially if we're going to be commanding really high price points to be profitable and sustainable, is that we have to sell the experience before we even sell the experience, meaning that they've got to be emotionally and mentally invested in your activity with your company before they even get on that website or before they pick up the phone to make the reservation. And we work with this on Zebulon too. Like anytime that we have somebody that's ready to talk with us about services, they've had enough exposure to us and they've gone through enough of the journey that they're already mentally, emotionally invested in working with us. So it's an easy sale, right? But the same is true for outfitters. How do we do that? Well, content creation, picking your audience, figuring out what platform they're on, not doing it literally like everybody else, where it's literally just a little tabloid on your screen that might be your Google ad, your social media ad. No, it's looking at the minute details of that journey and telling the story of people who have already gone through it and demonstrating that value and that experience so somebody could experience it before they even hit the sell button. That's, I
Mm.
think, the world that we're in. And something that supports that, a really good book that came out in the 90s, okay, is called The Experience Economy. And the experience economy in the
Mm.
90s talks about how our nation and just our economies went from being a commoditized economy to a product-based economy to a service economy. And then this in that 90 time period, we transitioned to the experience economy. Well, guess what? We've been in the experience economy for 30 years now. And so the book was telling about needing to do all of this 30 years ahead of its time. And so if people aren't doing the experience economy stuff right now, they're behind the times. And the guy sets the stage for, and he just mentions it. And I don't think he actually gets into it, but his prediction 30 years ago was that the next economy is going to be the transformational economy, where people just aren't seeking experiences, but they're seeking transformations. And we see that all the time, right? We're creating transformations with operators within their business. The operators who are selling premium price points, recognizing the transformation that their clients are going through and telling that, I think we are at the precipice of the transformational economy right now.
Yeah. I mean, that tracks with me. I think that's also, I mean, that ties into what outfitters do in the first place. Like, I think
Hmm.
a big call to it is like you see and get to be a part of these these transformational experiences with people, which like whenever I talk about it, doesn't matter how long I've been doing this, it always sounds cliche. Like, but until you're doing it, but like when you're there and you get to be a part of that experience with people when it's happening, it is so cool. Like it's so valuable. Yeah, that's one of the traps. Definitely not the financial trap, but that's one of the traps. That experience, that transformational trap.
And
We'll
operate.
workshop that name. That's not what we're gonna call it.
No.
I'm going to
Okay.
title this entire chat The Transformational Trap.
Yeah. Yeah. New blog post, transformational trap.
People are always thinking like, well, where do we start with that? Well, guess what? You literally had 10,000 passengers go down do your activities this year. You have 10,000 people that all you need to do is have them give you a 3-minute voice drop on the transformation they went through this year. And there you go. There's 15 years worth of content for you.
Yeah.
You know, and your transformation and uncovering that. And by the way, you can use AI to capture the content and extrapolate the value proposition. That's what we're doing in the accelerator for operators right now who are in
Yeah.
the accelerator at the moment.
Using it to aggregate all the input.
In part, yeah, aggregate the
Yeah.
input and actually articulate what is the value proposition as defined from their consumers, not as defined from the operator.
Matching
Yeah.
their tone, vocabulary, phrases, all that.
Mhm.
Well, when you figure out how to get AI to meaningfully and accurately synthesize and analyze data, let me know because I was really bummed out. I was hoping I tried it a couple times with trend survey data, anonymized. Don't worry, anybody. But I tried having AI analyze it for me, and it was garbage. It did a garbage job.
Every time we have it do an analysis, it's turned out to be garbage too.
Yeah,
It definitely does understand numbers and analysis in that case. Um, and it even will hallucinate when it comes to like trying to get exact quotes from people. But from our perspective, if you want to get in the 80% realm, it'll
Mhm.
get you there. If
yeah,
you
which is like overall sentiment analysis and stuff like that, right?
yep, 60,
Yeah,
80%, it'll get you there. But if you want to get better than 75% of it, you need to have much more of a human touch. So
yeah, yeah. Dating. How did we talk so much about AI?
a hot topic
That's
right
probably that's probably my fault.
Aaron, you mentioned, you don't doubt that the horse is real or that the tree you ran into is real. What we'll talk about internally and we'll remind each other, members of the Zebulon team, is like go touch dirt. Like, when was the last time that you went outside and touched dirt? And I feel like that's a good reminder. As an industry, we understand intrinsically how important that is. But after all this AI chat, it's I might need to go outside and touch some dirt.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, like it is just so easy to forget, like on a day-to-day basis. And it's like, I mean, to some degree, it increasingly, like as we're in front of screens and, in tall buildings and whatever else, like I think all of us have the luxury of working remotely for the most part, but most people don't. And yeah, it's easy to forget, but I kind of think of it similarly to how I always thought about early morning kayaking. It's like when it's 4 in the morning and like you agreed last night that you were going to go drive an hour and a half to do something scary, like, and you're tired. It's like the easiest thing in the world to just not go. But like 100% of the time that you do, you look back at the previous version of yourself that was considering not doing it like a crazy person. It's we all just need those reminders. And I mean, the cool thing is like whether like for all of us, I mean, and for the folks that we work with, we get to be a part of reminding people that.
Mhm. I got one more. Before we close, I want to ask you, when we asked you to be a part of the Fireside Chat originally, you told us the history of the Fireside Chat. Would you mind giving us a little skinny on that, in terms of your knowledge of where that started, like way back when?
Yeah, I mean, but actually, before I do, I want you. I would like, and Corey, you're not allowed to weigh in because you immediately were like picking up when I was talking about it. Zeb, I want you to explain like when Fireside Chat came first, who proposed the name? Second, and Corey, like, don't no hints. And second, like when you heard that, Zeb, if you didn't come up with it, like what did you think that was referencing? Then I'll
Yeah.
tell. Then I'll tell you.
So the fireside chat is like my third rendition of similar flops from the past, right? Welcome to innovation. You have all these ideas, you try it, you throw it at the wall, and hopefully something sticks, right? So I used to have similar kind of conversations prior to the pandemic and kind of throughout the history of when Zebulon was Ascent Accounting and Consulting and some other components. So when Corey and I were chatting about it, and a lot of that was just on lacking my accountability and consistency and follow through. Corey's a lot better on follow through and like keeping things going, right? Tenacity she's got. As an innovator, I'm lacking sometimes on those fronts. But anyways, so we 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 internally were chatting about having, industry people having this fireside chat really be as an initial way to sell the Eddie Accelerator that we were doing with Thomas. And so I was like, it's like sitting around a campfire, just talking with people. And so I think from there it was like, oh, it's like a fireside chat. So my
Okay.
background came in with it being kind of like an industry kind of thing that we're all familiar with, sitting around just talking, solving the world problems. Who knows where the conversation's going to go? Sometimes it'll get heated, sometimes it'll be chill. I don't know. It's just a fireside chat on that case.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and interestingly, like when I first heard Fireside Chat, I also thought like first was like Roosevelt, by the way, but Churchill did them too. I just think Roosevelt technically called them Fireside Chat. I might be getting that backwards. Um, in any
Yeah.
case, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're allowed to help me. You're not allowed to help Zeb. Um,
Can I talk now?
but yeah, yeah,
No, go for
yeah.
it.
Now that
Keep
Zeb
going.
has answered, and you can't give him hints. Yeah, initially thought like, oh, like you think campfire chat, like it probably has something to do with Roosevelt then. Um, but yeah, no, Roosevelt, I mean, so, and they both did this though, right? And around in like similar context, but like we were in dark days, like, in Britain, like they're getting bombed to death. Like the likelihood of being taken over by autocratic Germany is not low. In the United States, like similarly bleak circumstances. And so it's just a way for like leaders to like sources of comfort and authority in like calm and natural environment to basically explain complex issues to the citizenry and to give them like some sense of connectivity day to day, like that they were informed, they knew what was going on, and that they knew where the country was going, they knew where they were going as a group. Honestly, as I'm saying about it, as I'm talking about it, it makes more sense, which is why it should have been related to Roosevelt in the first place, because it's it's that source of like information and comfort and credibility and like calm tones, right? Next to in a calming environment. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So
actually, before we published our first Fireside Chat ever, I did a lot of research, some of it with AI, some of it good old-fashioned Google search, to make sure that we weren't kind of infringing on anyone's copyright because it's such a good term. And I obviously, harken back to AP US history and remember FDR and these fireside chats, and that it was, my understanding is that it was broadcast straight into people's, via the radio, straight into people's living rooms. And so it felt like they were right there.
Yeah.
As far as I know, my research came that no one else kind of uses this term nowadays or has it trademarked or anything. Um, it's very much parallels why we call the eddy, because an eddy of water is sometimes you can get caught in a loop and stuck, but oftentimes it's a respite on the river. You can duck into the eddy and you can take a breather and you can recap and regroup, similar to a fireside chat. If you're in the outdoors world, you sit around the campfire at night, you regroup, you hash things out. It's a moment to breathe and it's a moment to just kind of reflect. So all of that came together for this, but I love that you immediately were like, yes, history, I'm down. Anything to do with Churchill. Like, okay, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So the
That's a good
leader,
nexus.
was it that they would actually like have conversation or dialogue with multiple people, or was it just like Winston or Churchill
No,
just,
it was just them talking. No, they
just
weren't
them
talking to
talking?
anybody else. They were talking directly to, and that was kind of the thing. They were talking directly to people. Like they weren't having a conversation with somebody else. They were talking like, this is me talking to my people,
Cool.
like directly into your living room.
Hmm.
Like like shit seems bad right now.
Things are
And
tough,
it
but I'm going to
is.
hear and explain what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. A way of just like, and like now we take that for granted, right? Like now it's like we can't get away from being accosted by information and updates and whatever else. But at the time, it was like really isolating and really scary to like know that all these big things, like these big pressures, both on you and the country, are mounting, but there's no like readily available source, especially from like authoritative one beyond a paper, or whatever else, that was just talking to you about it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I hope our content is neat, or what's the acronym you use? That it's irrelevant, it's appropriate and specific. We know the audience, and it's authoritative in its nature, and all those components. Except for rather than being blasted to everybody, we just want to make sure it lands on the ears that need to hear it. So,
Yeah. Well, I think this is cool. Yeah. I'm glad you guys do this.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron, this has been an absolute pleasure. I know we're beyond the time, so thank you for getting on and chatting with us. Any final words that you want to say to outfitters in our network and pitches for AO or maybe your upcoming conference that's in a couple weeks?
Well, if there's anybody who is listening and who is not yet registered or watching, I'm not really sure. Um, is not yet registered for the conference, I'd highly encourage you to go. No, otherwise, I think I'm just really excited to be. I'm just really excited to be in this role, to be and still be part of this community. I mean, it's certainly not where I thought I'd be. It's
Mhm.
not what I intended to be, but I just couldn't get away from the people. Like it's the community that kept me stuck here and stuck in the best possible way. So it's really awesome talking to you guys. You're part of that too. It's really awesome talking to you guys, and I'm just really stoked to be where I am, doing what I am with the people I'm doing it with.
We got to know you at Ioga and saw what you did there, so we're super excited to see what you're able to do with America Outdoors. So
You're
keep
fighting the good fight for sure.